I was just telling Mr. Snerdley and the rest of the staff here, my timing, my instincts, man, oh man, are they impeccable. And by the way, in addition to that, it's so great to see philosophy, analysis, and fact, announced by me, worm its way into the drive-by media, particularly across the pond in the United Kingdom media. It's so fascinating. And then, of course, on Fox News, my take on events begins discussion panels. We have all of that and much more coming up on today's excursion into broadcast excellence, hosted by me, Rush Limbaugh, fine voice, fine fetter, emitting vocal vibrations coast to coast. The telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. If you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. President Trump just landed in Kansas City. He's got a speech at the VFW convention there at about, well, he's scheduled to begin the speech 22 23 minutes. They're always late. I don't know yet if we're going to jip it, but we will be rolling on it, and any highlights we will have. Now Yeah, I did. I lived in Kansas City for 10 years. It was an abject failure at everything I did there, but it all led to this. Absolute. Well, yeah, I mean, an abject failure, pretty accurate description. Moderate, with potential everywhere, but not realized. But I wouldn't trade the 10 years for anything. Now, here is my impeccable instinct. There's a story in Barron's today. The nightmare of fleeing high-tax states. I moved to New York in July of 1988, and I lived and worked there for 10 years. In 1997, I renounced citizenship in the state of New York and fled to the no-state income tax state of Florida, where I have lived since. At the time, I sent letters to the New York tax authorities every year telling them I had moved, showing them photocopies of my Florida driver's license, memberships in various organizations and clubs, hoping to be upfront and honest with them, that I no longer lived there and was not going to be filing tax returns anymore. Well, all that did was put a bullseye on my back, and I then was audited by New York State for 12 consecutive years. Some audits would include 3 tax years, so it wasn't 12 audits, but the audits did include 12 tax years. And every audit began with the premise that I was lying, that I actually still lived in New York because I had an apartment there, and that I was just trying to get out of paying New York taxes. So I had to prove in these audits, and I'm not making this up, I had to prove where I was. I mean, prove where I was every day of the year in about 10 different ways. Computer IP addresses, credit card receipts, travel locations, credit cards, all that stuff. And even with that, the assumption was that I was lying. And the way it ended up being resolved was that this whole residency business was tossed out. Up until that time, if you lived over 180 days somewhere else, then you could say that you were not an official resident of the place you lived 179 days. But that didn't apply to me. They came up with something brand new, and it was, okay, here's what we'll do with you. For every day you work in New York, there will be a per diem tax based on your income and all the other things, and you owe us a return, even if you only work in one day a year. So that led to a lot of anger on my part and a ban on my going to New York to work. A self-imposed ban. It was my ban placed on me. Simply, it wasn't about the money. It was the principle of the thing. I had to spend all kinds of money on lawyers and accountants during this audit process. And I since learned that New York State probably has a division in Albany that tracks every resident that moves away to a no income tax state. I don't think I was unique. Although the then governor of the state, during a press conference, what was his name, David? What was this guy's last name? David Patterson, that's right, David. He was asked a question about me leaving New York, and he said, the governor of New York said, if I had known we could get rid of Limbaugh by raising his taxes, I'd have done it sooner. He's the governor of New York. So I think my decision to leave was valid. And I have not worked a day in New York, probably, I don't know, at least 12 years. I've gone to New York when I'm there at night, like for fundraisers for the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, or I'll fly in and out to play golf somewhere, but not to work there. And it's as I say, it's just a principle of the thing. And when this became public, I got grief from what was to become Twitter. It didn't yet exist, but people called me greedy. People called me selfish. People called me willing to skip and skate out on my responsibilities and commitments. And I said, no, it's none of that. I'm smart. Well, I was ahead of the curve then, as I am now. Back to the story, the nightmare of fleeing high-tax states. It's in Barron's. I've heard from a number of top advisors in New York and California that certain clients are considering fleeing to lower or no income tax states in the wake of the new tax law's severe restrictions on state and local tax write-offs. A Bloomberg article looks at one good reason few people will likely follow through and move. It boils down to those pesky state tax collectors. Wealth managers and tax lawyers say that many of their New York clients are staying put after hearing about the scrupulous records they would have to keep to show they have really uprooted their lives and severed ties with their former states, Bloomberg writes. And that it's not as easy as just spending a few more days a month on a Florida vacation. No, it's not. But I wasn't playing I literally moved. I literally moved here. I sent them all the evidence. I was not cheating. I was not trying to convince them I was still in New York while lying to them about it. I literally moved, and it didn't matter. It wasn't accepted. It wasn't believed. There was even 1 year they subpoenaed my household staff and demanded to visit both my Florida residents and New York residents so they could see for themselves which one was the more lived in, expecting it to be the New York apartment and therefore able to convict me of lying. I mean, it was, so these guys, this happened to me. What is this? This is 20 years ago that this happened. And now people are beginning to wish to follow me out. And their accounts are saying, don't do it. And they're right. I mean, do you know what it's like to have to prove where you are every day of the year? 10 different ways, not just one. A picture of you by your pool in Florida, even with modern geotagging, doesn't work. 10 different ways. I mean, EIB won. I can say it never landed in New York. Doesn't matter. You could have flown in on some other plane and nobody knew. No matter what you said, they had a built-in excuse for why you were lying about it. And of course, I must say that people that represent me in matters like this do not want to be too aggressive because they're afraid the authorities will then go after them. So here's what we've heard about Illinois, Chicago, how they're running out of money, don't have any money at all. And they're going to raise new taxes with a surcharge on property taxes. And they are happily and with great fanfare telling existing residents, and you can't escape this by leaving. You can't. You know why? Because our new plan makes your house unsellable. Who in the world is going to buy your house here with this new tax on it? So you're stuck. Even if you move, we are going to collect taxes on you because you're not going to be able to sell your house. That was one of the parts of the announcement they made in Illinois. New York, this is going to get back to Barron's here. New York and other high-tax states play hardball, including issuing subpoenas for credit card statements, bank transactions, and phone records. They have been known to interview doormen or confirm doctor's appointments. All of this, folks, I could have been the source for this story. My message to those of you in California and New York and Illinois, get out while you can. They're going to make it even tougher and maybe impossible. And look at, their accountants who don't want the grief either. Their accountants are telling them, don't mess with it. Their record keeping alone will not make it worth it. It used to be all you had to do was keep a diary where you were every day and then submit that with your tax. I'm talking 30 years ago. If you had a vacation home somewhere, if you lived in Florida 182 days a year and the rest of the time, or 185 days in Florida and 175 in New York, that's all you had to do. And you were then considered a Florida resident. Not that way anymore. Particularly if you're a New Yorker and you leave. If you live in a high-tax state, the state government is going to give you hell if you try to. And you know what I think is going to happen? I think that even if you do leave, they're going to try clawback taxes, which is what effectively they're doing in Illinois. Now tell me, how is this freedom? How is this freedom? How is this you want to exercise the right to live where you want to live, and look what the state, I mean the capital S state, the regime, not the individual state. Look what they're doing. They're planning ways to limit your ability to exercise your freedom where you want to go, where you want to live, all because they have been irresponsible and spent their states into near bankruptcy with all of these unfunded liabilities on pensions and you name it, and they don't have the money to operate their states now. And unlike the federal government, they can't print any money. So people that want to leave are stuck. There is only one benefit to this that I see. It's going to be to keep a bunch of liberals in New York rather than have them move down here to North Carolina, to Texas, or wherever and try to convert those states, which are now red, into blue. So liberals, I think it's only right that you suffer under the policies of people you vote for. You voted for these people. You vote for them every year, you donate to them, you put them in office, you keep them there, you support the bureaucrats they hire. Well, there you go. That's the selfish view. The altruistic view would be, gee, I hope you're able to get out. Who knows what I'm doing to myself by telling this story now? The audits may kick back up again. But I've got the system down pat now. But it took 12 years. And every year, you're lying. We don't believe you. And then your first 2 or 3 submissions, they don't believe. And they have the authority, tax law, tax court. Now, I never went to tax court. I don't want to confuse anybody. They were just negotiations with the audit agents. But in tax court, you are the only place in America where you're presumed guilty. And you have to prove your innocence. You have to prove you didn't do it. So just be aware that, once again, I, your host, on the cutting edge of societal evolution, and if I had not been raised with such class and manners, I would tell you how much money I have saved by not paying taxes in New York City and New York State. But I was raised better than that. My dad said, don't ever talk about money, and I don't. But you would be stunned. Just as stunned as you are when you find out how much Simply Safe home security doesn't cost, you would be blown away by this. But I will keep it to myself. Now, what else do we have on tap here today? Oh, California Power Grid urges consumers to conserve energy in heat wave. They want you to turn off everything in your house. They want you to turn off your air conditioning. They want you to turn off your lights. Wait a minute. What about all the renewable energy? What about all the solar? And what about all of the wind? Why isn't that covering for this? Look what California residents were sold. They were sold solar, renewable, wind. It's the answer. It's clean. It doesn't pollute. And now we find, with a heat wave, they don't even have enough fossil fuel-generated electricity to handle it without a bunch of brownouts and asking people to turn off their electricity. You know what's going to happen if you do that? You could die. California Power Grid urges consumers to conserve energy in heat wave. Power grid operators yesterday issued an alert to homes and businesses to conserve electricity today and tomorrow when a heat wave is expected to blanket the state. California Independent System Operator, the grid operator, said it issued a so-called flex alert due to high temperatures across the western United States, reduced electricity imports into the state. What? Electricity imports? Oh, yeah. California has to buy electricity from, in some cases, they might even be buying coal from the Chi-Coms. Do you know in Connecticut they buy coal from the Chi-Coms? I have been out on Long Island Sound, and I've seen these gigantic barges and tankers going by. I said, what the hell is that? They said, that's coal from the Chi-Coms. What's it for? To run the power plant. Wait a minute. I said, what about all the wind and solar and all that stuff that's supposed to save the day? Nah, it's not even... It doesn't even make a dent. It just doesn't. Really? Yeah, they said it doesn't. The Independent System Operator alert followed an earlier notice by Southern California Gas Company, the gas utility for the southern part of the state. They issued a gas curtailment watch yesterday, notifying customers to be prepared to reduce gas use if needed, with power generators expected to burn more fuel this week than usual to keep air conditioners humming. SoCal Gas, a unit of California energy company Sempra Energy, said the watch would remain in effect until further notice. It's only a 2-day heat wave, but the watch will remain in effect until further notice. You know, I really think if California would just turn off all of the liberal programming they consume, things would be better in that state. If they just turn off MSNBC, turn off CNN, turn off the late-night comics, ban the New York Times from being published in the state, push away from the computer, skip all the fake news sites, get off social media, don't listen to insane rantings on podcasts, just go cold turkey on liberal programming, and who knows how much electricity will be saved. Now, what do we do with people with electric cars? Oh, my God. What about people who only have Teslas? And they're being told, what are they going to do? Should people with gasoline-powered cars chip in and offer rides to people whose cars are powered by batteries who now can't be because they've got to turn off the electricity in their... What are they going to do?
Of freedom.
Hi, welcome back. Rush Limbaugh. As I said earlier, happy to see my analysis and acknowledged brilliance worming its way into drive-by media coverage in the UK. I have a story here from the UK Guardian. Here's the headline: What liberals still get wrong about Trump support. And the subheadline is, after each outrage, progressives believe supporters will drain away from Trump. On the contrary, he's giving his supporters what they want. I could have written the story. You've heard it. You've heard me explain it, and you already know it. You know why you're hanging in with Trump. You know why your support for Trump increases with each faux attack and phony controversy, manufactured crisis. I've made the point these people don't. They're not making a single effort to find out who you are or any other Trump supporter is, making no effort to understand. They just want to hold you in contempt and impugn you. This guy... name is Henry Olsen, Senior Fellow, Ethics and Public Policy Center. Over there has delved into it. I want to share some of this with you just to show you how the tentacles here are spreading. Hey, have you seen the Trump tweet from about 10:50 this morning, 10 minutes till 11? Listen to this. I'm very concerned that Russia... Listen to this. I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election. Based on the fact that no president has been tougher on Russia than me, they'll be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump. This is called a major jam. This is jamming it where the sun don't shine into everybody in the drive-by media and the Democrat Party. Let me read this. This is great. This is on par with Russia. Are you listening? Maybe you could find the 33,000 missing Hillary emails, and they think that triggered the Russians hacking. That's what they really think. I'm very concerned, Trump tweets, that Russia will be fighting very hard. He's just adopted their line of thought. They're out there saying the Russians are going to meddle in the elections. The Russians are going to tamper in 2018. So Trump is stealing their thunder. Some might say trying to get in on it. But nevertheless, I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting. This is exactly the kind of thing I would do. Just to, you know how we tweak the media on this program very often. That's why I love this. I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election based on the fact that no president's been tougher on Russia than me. Do you know how they're going to blow gaskets? Well, they probably are because the tweet's over an hour old. Based on the fact that no president's been tougher on Russia than me, the Russians will be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump. So Trump is now accusing Putin of trying to meddle in the elections to help Democrats win. He's just turning it right around on them. Instead of slinking away and acting exposed or guilty or defensive and trying to sue for peace, he's just turning it right around on them. And in advance, he's accusing them of benefiting from Russian attempts to hurt him by electing them. And look what we just got here, audio soundbite wise. Elizabeth McCoy, noted Obamacare expert, was on the Fox Business Network today, Varney and Company, and this story about people leaving high-tax states, this is big in those states. You may not have run across this story, but, you know, the egocentric nature of people who live in media capitals, who tend to think that all news is about them and that everything is about them, relates to them, and therefore it becomes national news. If it's affecting them, then you should care, is their attitude. So this become big news. The idea that states are going to track down people that leave for no-tax states. So Stuart Varney is talking to Betsy McCoy. He says it's very hard for people to move out of high-tax states, right?
Establishing that your domicile has moved, that legally you are no longer residing in tax hell, Connecticut, New York, Jersey, Illinois, California. That is not so easy. You have to have a Florida driver's license, Florida voter registration, own a home in Florida. But that's just the beginning. Here's the tough part. Those auditors are going to come in and say, well, where are your primary care physicians? Where do you keep your family heirlooms and photographs? Then they're going to say, prove to us that you have not spent any moment of 183 days in New York, for example, or Connecticut. And to prove that, they're going to look at your Easy Pass. They're going to look at all your credit card statements. And that's just for starters. Any second of a day spent in New York counts as a full day in New York. And it is very, very tough to prove that you have officially moved your domicile to one of those tax-free states.
Been there, done that. This is my whole point. Been there, done that, starting back in 1997. This is cutting-edge societal evolution. And she doesn't even describe, she gets half of it. But the real point of this is, it should not be hard to prove where you live. I know there's scammers out there, but there wouldn't be hard to expose. But if you've really moved, you know, showing them a driver's license that doesn't impress them. Well, anybody can get a driver's license. No, the state requires residents here to get it. Well, that doesn't matter. We don't accept that. Well, here's my doctor. Well, no, we won't accept that. You can always fly to New York to your old doctor. I mean, no matter what you tell them, it doesn't work. They just are not going to believe it. This 183-day business, that's out the window, too. That no longer flies. It may be for some people grandfathered on that, but if you're leaving today, it's not that you have to spend 183 days where you go. That's not how it's going to be. They're going to get you for every day you're in the city that you just left, or the state. If it's a work day, they're going to get you. No matter how many days out of the state you live somewhere else. And here's the next bite. Varney says, I was expecting a mass exodus of people out of high-tech states, but you don't think so?
It's going to take a lot of time. You will see more leaving than we have seen so far. After all, most of the taxpayers in tax hell haven't endured the actual pain of writing that check yet. It's an unforgettable experience. It's definitely depressing real estate values, no question about that. It's getting very hard to sell one of these mega mansions in one of these tax hell states because the property taxes are no longer deductible above a cap.
See? Exactly what we've told you. So they've got you. They think they've got you. You can't sell where you live now. So you're going to not escape our property taxes. You're not going to escape whatever increases in property taxes there are. We've got you. There is a benefit. It's going to keep liberals where they live rather than keep them moving and infecting other parts of the country. But still, tell me how any of this is freedom. It isn't. Just something as simple as moving away is something that is going. Listen to her. She's exactly right, describing how hard it is to prove. And I'm telling you, she only got half of what you go through. Now, back to this UK Guardian story, what liberals still get wrong about Trump support. As I say, it's good to see this stuff spreading beyond the shores of the United States. It's a fascinating read. It is true. If you've ever wondered how Trump support remains solid in spite of constant attacks, this guy has figured it out, but he's in the UK. We still haven't seen this story. Well, we've seen parts of this story, but we've not seen the full thing yet published in America. But we benefit from the fact that the political left never, ever learns from their mistakes because they don't believe they make any. Now, I have been pointing this out for I don't know how long, and now finally it shows up in the UK. Now, let me give you some pull quotes in the piece. Pull quote number one, to quote Ronaldus Magnus, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant, it's just that they know so much that isn't so. They presume that because Trump is so unconventional in style that his coalition must be equally unconventional, but it isn't. The data clearly shows that Trump's political coalition is pretty much the traditional Republican coalition. The often virulent behavior of anti-Trump partisans has made partisan Republicans especially unwilling to abandon Trump even when he stumbles. Bingo! It is the traditional Republican coalition that has even been abandoned by the Republican Party in Washington. That's what these people are all missing. They believe that Trump voters are a bunch of people that have never voted or haven't voted in a long time. They think they're not very well educated. They're mostly people that can't speak English very well. They're hicks. They have guns. Their women never leave the kitchen. And their kids never leave the house. And they're just constantly fed up because they're losing money, they're losing their jobs, they're unable to modernize, and their last gasp effort to stand up for themselves is to vote for this bigot. That's who they think the Trump coalition is. I mean, there are stories today in the U.S. media about how this coalition cannot hold together, that it's very temporary, and it's totally oriented and based on Trump. And it can't, and it won't survive Trump. They've got it totally backwards. Trump came after all of this. Trump is a beneficiary of all of this. And I'm not trying to be critical of Trump at all. Don't misunderstand. I'm just trying to tell you. It's the same thing with this program. This program didn't create a bunch of people who had never thought this way before. You were always there. You just never had any place in the media that reflected what you think. Well, it's the same thing with Trump. The Republican Party was not providing the Republican base with what it was promising during campaigns and what the Republican base is oriented toward, and Trump is. And so the Democrats, the left, has got a totally skewed idea of who the Trump coalition is and how temporary it is. And the one thing that they think is that most Trump supporters are not very bright. That's why they believe, and they think you're super patriots. I mean, unreasonable super patriots. They think you're my country, right or wrong, and really wrong, my country. They think you'll back your country when it's racist, when it's sexist, when it's homophobic, when it's anti-people of color. That's who they think you are. As such, because they think that you're stupid, they think that you'll be able to be separated from Trump. They don't have the slightest idea what it is. They don't have the slightest idea how what they say and what they do solidifies Trump support. Now, this guy in the UK starts to figure it out. Next pull quote, nor are Trump's voters united by racism. Trump's voters are not united by sexism, as many on the left presume. Analysis by the Cato Institute found that Trump's general election number of voters, his general election support, broke into 5 groups. Only one, the American Preservationist, contained a large number of voters who could be said to be generally hostile to minorities. They were outnumbered by another group, the Free Marketeers, whose attitudes toward racial and ethnic minorities were as or more often tolerant than the attitudes of Hillary Clinton supporters. A big key. Trump supporters are far more tolerant than leftist Democrats are. The genuine intolerance in our culture, in fact, resides on the left, in the Democrat Party, in its enclaves like universities. Trump supporters are far more accepting, they are far more tolerant, and they're far more open-minded. But the Democrats and the media think the exact opposite. Closed-minded, dumb, unsophisticated, uneducated, unaware. Life experiences are very slim and narrow. You basically segregate yourselves away from people that don't look like you and don't think like. That's what they think you are, and they think Trump has found a way to appeal to you. They couldn't be more wrong. And they are never going to be persuaded that they are wrong. Doesn't mean that Trump backers are blind. Polls show an unusually high share of Republicans do not say they strongly approve of his performance. They're well aware of his foibles. In other words, they're not mind-numbed robots. They are thinking and thoughtful people. But they are united more by their opposition to liberalism and the media. They are repulsed. You are repulsed by the kind of things being said and being done to Trump, and it solidifies his support and grows it. As we pointed out yesterday, it happened all last week. Trump's numbers edged up even in that faux crisis of the Helsinki summit. Righto. Righto, my friends. Now, there's one more aspect of this story in the UK Guardian that I want to highlight to you. Never mentioned is that this is exactly what happened in the primary. The truth is there are no candidates on either side anymore. And stop and think. Every candidate, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, pick your candidate. Every one of them is going to look dull and boring when compared to Trump. Every one of them. Just like during the Republican primary, it looked like a bunch of Ken doll TV news anchors against a guy who was living life and wasn't afraid to be who he was. So what is it going to come down to then? It's going to come down to policies. Trump got elected on policy, and the left cannot admit this. They refuse to admit that Trump was elected on policy. A pull quote from the story. The 2016 exit poll showed that Trump won because he decisively beat Hillary among the 18% of Americans who did not like either candidate. These voters tended to be suburban, college-educated, Republican-leaning men. They became reluctant Trump voters. They were undecided until the very end of the race, but they decided at the end that the devil whose policies they liked was better than the devil whose policies they didn't. So let me translate. You had 18, according to exit polls, we'll live with it because that's all we got, 18% of people that voted didn't like either Trump or Hillary. They wanted to vote, though. What was it that determined their vote? Policies. 18% didn't like either candidate, decided on policies. You know, the fact of the matter is that most elections do come down to policy, except when the left loses, it never is chalked up to policy. When the left loses, there's some other explanation. Last time it was the Russians meddling, screwing with the election outcome, unfairly treating Mrs. Clinton, or what have you. Other times it's the Supreme Court with their bogus Florida recount in 2000. In 2004, when John Kerry lost, yeah, I just needed 50,000 more votes in Ohio, and then I would have won. Somehow, somebody screwed him out of 50,000 votes in Ohio. They never lose because of policy, and yet they always lose because of policy. Obama, on the other hand, did not win because of policy. Obama couldn't be honest about what he's going to do. Obama won for purely surface reasons. A, people were fed up and hated the Republicans because of Bush. And then Obama, the first African-American, they could vote for the African-American, hopefully end racism and show everybody they're not racist. They'd vote for Obama's policies. Democrats never win on policy. They can't. Big lesson there.
The magic will continue on the EIB network.
Now, by the way, in light of what you just heard, the Democrats step right into it again. House Democrats pass resolution denouncing Trump in wake of Helsinki. The Republicans loved him in Helsinki. Denver Post runs letter to editors suggesting Trump should be executed. 2/3 of Democrats say Trump treason charge is sincere. They keep stepping in it, thinking that they are someday going to separate you from your support for Trump. They're not even getting close. And we'll be back. So here are Democrats stepping in it again. The House Democrats pass resolution denouncing Trump in wake of Helsinki. Now they're trying to prove collusion because of what happened with Trump in the press conference in Helsinki. So they pass now a resolution denouncing Trump. Fine. Let them go ahead and service their base. That's what they're doing. What they don't realize, and you know, we really don't want to say this too loud. I mean, I really don't want to say it too much, but I have to let you know that I know so that you can be confident in what you know. Because when I tell you what I know and it agrees with what you know, then you end up being confident of what you know. So I have to tell you now and then. Are you able to follow that? It's perfect logistics, a logical circle. And the fact of the matter is, they live with this crazy belief that they can separate you from your support for Trump. At the same time, they have to service this increasingly lunatic fringe that they've got, this base. So they do that, and they don't realize that they are solidifying and expanding, and the polling data indicates that it's happening, expanding support for Trump. I guarantee you, you know that the exit poll data we just had, 18% of voters in 2016 didn't like either Trump or Hillary, but they ended up voting for Trump because of policy. Well, same thing's going to happen this time around as long as the Republicans can get on the same page with Trump, policy-wise. There's no reason for them to lose the House whatsoever because the Democrats are not mainstreaming anything. The Democrats are taking themselves and their base way, way, way out on a cliff on the fringe left. And they're not pulling together a whole bunch of undecided Americans and taking them along for the ride. If the American people are doing anything, it's resisting the fringe left. And then the Denver Post runs a letter to the editors suggesting Trump should be executed for treason. The letter criticized the president and Republican Senator Cory Gardner following Trump's summit with Putin and compared this to the Soviet spies Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who passed atomic bomb secrets to Moscow, and they were executed, according to the letter writer, for far less. And the very same people who are calling Trump a traitor have never accepted that the Rosenbergs were. The same people calling Trump a traitor loved the Rosenbergs, and they loved Alger Hiss, and they loved all these Soviet spies. And then 2/3 of Democrats say Trump treason charge is sincere. Okay, I have lost audio. Do you still have it in there? Okay, I'm back. 2/3 of Democrats say Trump treason charge is sincere. Well, folks, they just continue to step in it. Now, what this is, the claims that President Trump is a traitor are made sincerely, not for political reasons. Say 80% of liberals and 2 out of 3 Democrats who are out there saying it. They're not just saying it for effect. They're not just saying it for show. They believe it. Keep it up, gang. That's all we can say. And then they keep saying, here's another one. Democrat candidate struck by the parallels between Trump's rise and Hitler's. The Democrat challenging Representative Lee Zeldin, who is the Republican for his New York House seat, said he was motivated to run for office because of parallels he saw between Trump's political rise and Hitler's, ascent to power in Germany before World War II. The comments are made in February Democrat primary forum in East Marion, New York, captured in a video sent to The Hill from a Republican operative and also posted online on the Facebook page. I've read 5 lines. We still don't have the name of this Democrat. Have you noticed that? You're wondering, well, who is it, Rush? I'm getting there, but you got to read a long way to find the name of this Looney Tune. In the video, Perry Gershon, who previously worked as a lender in commercial real estate, recalls paying a visit to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. During the 2016 presidential race, I was struck by the parallels between the rise of Trump today and the rise of Hitler back then. So you have to read a very lengthy paragraph, and even then, this guy is not identified as the candidate. Dem candidate struck by parallels. And even after you read the paragraph, this guy that they quote, you're still not sure is the candidate they're talking about in the headline. I've been to the Holocaust Memorial Museum, and I have been to Yad Vashem, and I will tell you that there is nothing you will see in either place that makes you think of Donald Trump. There's not a thing that you will see that will make you think of Donald. If you walk into Yad Vashem or the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum and think of Donald Trump, you are sick. You are a sick puppy. And this from the Daily Caller, Democrats roll out their economic agenda, and it looks a lot like Trump's. Oh, and the Norks have begun dismantling their rocket test site. This is a rocket test site that they have used to launch missiles ostensibly at Guam and at us. They're in the process of tearing them down. The Democrats just yesterday and late last week, have you noticed that the Norks are not doing anything and that Trump is really a failure there? The Norks haven't done, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, here come the satellite photos of the Norks getting rid of one of their nuclear installations. Now, we keep all this at arm's length. I mean, we're talking about the Norks and a number of, crazy people. But the Norks are releasing the satellite. Well, actually, they are, and we are using our own. Now, I got to get to the audio sound bites, and then after that, we'll get started on the phones. I mentioned at the top of the program that it is your host and things said on this program that are serving to inspire many panel discussions on cable TV. And so it was last night, Fox News at Night with Shannon Bream. She had a former advisor to Hillary Clinton. This guy is, I don't know how you describe him, not all there. His name is Felipe Reines. And he was asked about my comments on the Carter Page FISA warrant.
Rush Limbaugh weighing in and saying if it was so bad with Carter Page, why didn't they go to Trump and tell him someone is trying to infiltrate your campaign from Russia?
Why did they get a FISA warrant to spy so that they could find it happening? What was their point here? It doesn't seem to me that anybody involved on the Obama team wanted to stop it. They wanted an opportunity to find evidence that it was happening. And if they couldn't find any evidence, they wanted to plant some. So she leads off with that bite, my analysis of the FBI and Carter Page. And here is Felipe Reines and his answer.
What's getting lost here is that the Mueller investigation isn't just about possible ties between the Trump campaign and the Russians. It was to look into Russian interference. And I'm not going to use any kind of judgment about who they helped, who they hurt. I think we all agree, although the president goes back and forth, that they did so. He is tasked with, among other things, finding out who did it and why. As part of that, Carter Page, who does not seem like the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I don't think the Republican Party should go too far on the limb for him, he, for years, has been just sort of canoodling with the wrong people.
Wait. We got a FISA warrant on this guy because he canoodles? We got a FISA warrant on Carter Page because he canoodles with the wrong people. According to who? The wrong people. So you see, they're still going for this bifurcation business. Well, what's getting lost here is that the Mueller investigation isn't just about possible ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. It was to look into Russian interference. I'm not going to use any kind of judgment about who they helped or who they hurt. Well, that's new, because up until last Friday, you guys were convinced that Putin had helped Trump. Until Mueller's indictments happened, till Rosenstein's announcement, you were convinced. Now, well, we got to remember it was about much more than that. It was about Russian meddling, too. We're not going to get into arguments who they were trying to help and who they're not. That's for another. Really? You're going to drop the whole idea of collusion now? Carter Page. So this guy, Felipe Reines, advising the Republicans not to defend Page. Don't go out too far on a limb on this guy, because he canoodled with the wrong people. Up next, Fox and Friends this morning. They talked about the comments made here yesterday about Trump's tweet, his all-caps tweet to Iran. To set things up, here is the fill-in co-host Todd Pyro introducing and playing a clip from yesterday's big program.
Rush Limbaugh had a pretty interesting take on Iran as it relates to Russia and those same liberals who criticize the president for not being tough enough with Russia. Here's what he had to say.
The drive-bys are now obsessed, for the moment, with Trump and his all-caps tweets to President Rouhani of Iran, who is continuing to shout death through America here and death through America there. And Trump's had it. We don't laud over anybody. We just be who we are. There's no shame in becoming a superpower. Iran, good bet, is Russia's #1 client state at this point in time. Pretty hard to reconcile Trump's tweets with the claim that Trump is Putin's puppet. Trump is aggressively challenging Russia's puppet client state in the Middle East. How in the world is this acting as Putin's puppet, right? And this is not an isolated incident. Here's Steve Doocy reacting.
Exactly. And so when you get in the Wayback Machine and you look at how those on the political left just exploded when the president of the United States engaged Kim Jong-un the way he did on Twitter and stuff like that, calling him Little Rocket Man. What did the political left say? He's going to get us into a shooting war. Sound familiar?
I think the majority of the country likes it. I really do. I think that they like his tough stance, that he's not a politician.
That was Ainsley Earhart weighing in there. So once again, your host kicking off a discussion, making a point. Look, if Trump is so in bed with Putin, if Putin owns Trump, then what in the world is Trump doing rattling sabers with their #1 Middle Eastern client state? And I just want to remind you, if you missed this, Trump's tweet from this morning, I'm very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election. Based on the fact that no president has been tougher on Russia than me, they'll be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump. This is brilliant on so many levels. It is brilliant because of the reaction in the media it's going to create and cause. It is brilliant because it takes one of the main points the left have been using to get rid of Trump, that he colluded with Trump, and really throwing it back at them. They have been demanding that Trump acknowledge the Russians' meddle. Even people on our side have been telling Trump, you better acknowledge they meddled. You don't have to say they colluded. You can say they meddled without it affecting the legitimacy of your election. Everybody's been telling Trump. So what does Trump do? He acknowledges that the Russians are going to meddle again. And this time they're going to be trying to help the Democrats because nobody's tougher on Putin and Russia than Trump is. I'm telling you, this is politically brilliant, and it happened instinctively. I'm sure this is just who Trump is. This is how he's naturally inclined. And privately, these people on the left and the media will see this tweet, and they will literally have conniptions. They may not portray that on TV, but I'm telling you, it drives them crazy. Brief time out, back with much more after this. You'll have my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Already halfway through today's exciting program, and we just now getting started on the phones in Cornella, Georgia. This is Travis. You're up first, and welcome, sir.
Hey, Rush. Good day we're having today. But what I wanted to point out was going back to the moving from New York to Florida. At the amount of trouble you were having, I would have offered to wear a GPS bracelet for a year.
Well, now this is 1997, 1998, and if you go back, I mean, the iPhone didn't hit till 2007, don't forget. GPS trackers and that kind of thing were very rudimentary and new. They were not cheap. And as such, back then, I don't know that they would have been widely accepted. I can just tell you that it didn't occur to me, and I am Mr. High Tech. But so I don't think they're going to accept even things like this. They'll always claim somebody else could be wearing it. You'd have to have the thing implanted. And even then, they will claim that anybody could get in, hack it, or input false data. The point is, I guess I should make this point, they are going to get money out of you even when you don't live there. The objective is to make you pay even after you leave. Their objective is to get you to pay as much as they can force you to pay. And they will put you through the ringer. They will put you through the bills of lawyers and accountants. They won't leave you alone. You end up paying whatever just to end it, is what a lot of people end up doing. You see, it's not about the specifics. You're made to think that it is. But the long-range objective is to get people who have left the state to keep paying the state. And as much as they can get you to pay. It's not about where you really are. Those are just techniques they use to either guilt you or intimidate you or to speed your process and thinking toward ending it. Ending the confrontation. Ending the conflagration. But on the other hand, here's my iPhone. New York State, this is where I was. I mean, my location data in the iPhone can't be fake. Yeah, but do you have another phone? Do you have Yeah, I do. I have a couple. Well, what do they say? Well, I guarantee you, I haven't put one in New York. When I'm not there, I don't care. We want to see it. And then they'll get into all kinds of things about how that can maybe be tampered with. There is no presumption of innocence when taxes are concerned. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Now, again, my situation didn't end up in tax court. This was all back and forth with auditors and lawyers. But in tax court, if you actually end up there, you are presumed guilty. That's the starting point, and you do. It's the only place, theoretically, where you have to prove your innocence. It's the only place you have to prove you didn't do what they're claiming that you did, or that you don't owe what they claim that you owe. Then there's also this factor too, folks. If you happen to be a high-profile person, let's say you happen to be considered controversial, and let's say the reason you're controversial is because you believe things that most of the people in the state you're leaving don't believe. Well, you go out and hire accountants and lawyers, and in some cases, they're not going to push real hard in defending the controversial person because they are afraid the taxing authorities will come after them. Guilt by association. I've seen all of this, folks. I'm telling you, I have 1997 and now, that's 20 years. I've got a 20-year head start on everybody who's just now contemplating leaving their high-tax state. And what this is prompted by, Trump tax reform, which caps the deductibility of state and local taxes at $10,000. So they want to leave because of that. And the taxing authorities are saying, well, good luck selling your house. Because with this new property tax deal we got here, who are you going to sell it to? Especially if you own one of those mansions out on Park Avenue in the Hamptons. Who's going to buy it except Saudi Arabian guy that's never here, who, by the way, they'll never chase for taxes. So, as Mr. Snerdley said, where is the freedom in all of this? Look, Reason Magazine has a story up that Drudge is linked to, and let me call up the Drudge page here real quick. It basically says, for more and more of our actions, more and more of what we do depends on government permission. I had a time to read a little bit of the story. If you want to build a bridge over a swimming pool, you need a permit. If you want to have your lights on in the backyard during turtle season, you can't. There is no getting permission. You just can't do it. They have spies running around with cheap little cameras trying to claim that your 40-watt light bulb 300 feet away is blinding sea turtles. Sticking with the phones, a lot of people have been on hold since the program began, and we want to get to them. This is Noah in Rochester, Minnesota. Welcome, sir. You're next.
Hey, Rush. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah, I just thought it's kind of interesting how you have to believe the Russians meddled, kind of like you have to believe in climate change or man-made global warming or whatever the issue of the day is, even though we haven't seen any evidence.
Yeah, you know, that's a brilliant point. That is an absolutely brilliant point. Mr. Snerdley is asking himself where he's heard that, but no, it might have been 2 weeks ago, but it never. Noah, thanks. It is a great analogy. The Russians meddled. You can't disagree. The Russians meddled. Trump has to say it. The Russians meddled. Trump has to say it, and it doesn't mean that they colluded, and it doesn't mean that his election's invalid, but he's got to say it. The Russians meddled. And climate change just is. By the way, Rasmussen, there's been a bunch of surveys lately on what's on the minds of the American people. And this is another, like Larry Sabato, who is, he's a political scientist at University of Virginia, and he's an accredited member of the Swamp. He would be establishment extraordinaire. And he's out now saying that Democrats, it's in the cards. Democrats are going to win the House. It's there. It's indisputable. For the most part, Democrats are going to win the House. If you look at the polling data that they trust, you look at polling data they cite, there isn't a single issue that Democrats are making top-of-the-line issues that anybody cares about. Even on immigration, the number one issue in this Rasmussen survey of what's on the minds of the American people, there's a Pew survey, and number one in both is immigration, but not families being separated. It's border-related. People are saying we wouldn't have this problem of families being separated if they weren't getting in the first place. And you can't argue with that. I mean, when you get right down to it, the reason families are separated is because people are showing up here expecting to get in illegally. Now, let's take a look at the human side of this for a moment, because some of this you have to acknowledge. There are people living in El Salvador and Guatemala and other parts of Central America who live on dollars a day. And up north is the United States of America. And if you can just get there, you have a chance, and your kids have a chance to earn or get much more than what you at present live on. Now, human beings are remarkably alike in a number of ways, with exceptions, of course, and they're rare. Most parents want a better life for their kids than they had, no matter how bad or good their lives were. They want their kids to have a great future. And most everybody alive is seeking an improved standard of living, however they get it. Some people are looking for better work, better job, higher wage. Some are looking for ways to gain welfare systems or what have you. But the objective is people want more. This is a natural human condition to want more, to be better, to acquire more, to possess more, to have a greater, more comfortable standard of living. And we can't criticize people for that, because that's built into who we are. I think it's the essence of nature. Where the problem comes in is where those chances, opportunities around the world are not nearly as they should be, not nearly as plentiful as they should be. Why is that our fault? We have done so much to try to help the rest of the world become independently prosperous. We have tried to export our way of thinking, export our way of freedom and governance. We run into tyranny, we run into dictators, we run into people that want to enslave people and do not want their people to have upward mobility at all. That would be a challenge to their power. That's not our fault. We've done our best to get rid of a lot of those kinds of dictatorial leaders and so forth. But somehow, when all of this is considered, the left in this country finds a way to blame America. A, for our prosperity, B, for not sharing it, and C, for acquiring it by virtue of stealing it from these other people. And so you add all these three up, and it means that we are incumbent to let these people, it's incumbent upon us to let these people in. We owe it to them because they don't have what they don't have because of us. And so American foreign policy used to be about helping other nations. What the foreign aid budget was all about originally, American foreign policy was oriented toward building up the economies of allied nations. But the left got hold of everything after certain passage of time after World War II, and the whole mission changed. And the mission became dictated by America's guilt and the unfairness that is America's prosperity. And incumbent upon that, or with that, was the lack of understanding of how it happened. So America's prosperity was just accidental. It was like winning the lottery. It wasn't the result of our system of human liberty and freedom. It wasn't at all related to the fact that in the United States, if you could dream it, you could be it. No, none of that. None of that. That's not true. That's always a myth. To the left. But no, it's always been the case. And that's why so many people want to come. But we simply can't maintain who we are. We can't maintain what we are without borders and without maintaining our own distinct, unique culture, which has provided and contributed to thus our being the lone economic and military superpower in the world. Now, you would think that something as great and as prosperous as the United States would be something a lot of people would want to copy, would want to emulate. And this is what the foreign policy of the United States used to be oriented toward, helping those who wanted to emulate the United States. But then it wasn't long after World War II and the left took over that all of that became, who are we to impose our way of life on people? What were we imposing? Freedom. I never knew freedom as an imposition. But to the American left, anything American that was transferred or attempted to be installed in another country was considered an imposition, and it was our imperialist nature and our hubris and our great ego to think that we had all the answers and everybody should just be like us. The left loved to point out our failures, our deficiencies, our pockmarks, our racism, our sexism, our bigotry, our homophobia, our slavery, and all this in order to denigrate the greatness of America. And this is what we're still up against today. This is what we fight each and every day, is the left's view of this country and their effort to take us in a direction where their view of the country would become reality. Well, that is eventually Venezuela. That is eventually Cuba. That is eventually a wall built to keep people in. This is how communist and socialist nations survive. It's when you stop and think of it, it's asinine. So we have all these poor people trying to get into the country. And I'm going to grant them the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of them are coming here simply for the basest of human desires and needs. But then the American political system gets hold of them. And they become, they are seen as pawns. For the Democrats, they're future voters. For the Republicans, they're cheap labor. And maybe there's some overlap, because I'm sure some Democrats like cheap labor too, mowing the lawn and this kind of thing. And all of us are told that they're doing all of this for altruistic reasons, that we want these people to experience a better life. That's not the case. The Democrats want these people to be able to vote. Republicans want, hopefully, register Republican and work cheap and so forth. It's hideous. So these people become pawns. I mean, they're so desperate, they send their kids alone. I have no doubt they're being counseled to do it, because once their kids get here, the ticket for the parents to eventually be allowed in is not far away. Lost in our immigration is assimilation. People arriving are not assimilating, not becoming Americans. They're not, in many cases, learning English. And they are not taking advantage of the great opportunity. Some do, but those are the legal arriving immigrants. And some who have arrived illegally over the years. But when you get down to brass tacks, we're not separating families. They're doing that. So the Democrats make up this phony story that the Republicans and Trump like separating families at the border because they're anti-immigration, when in fact, it's not the case. And the American people, in all of these surveys and polls, when asked what's most important to you, immigration is at the top, but it is not the separation of families aspect. It is the border aspect. This is not a winning issue for the Democrats, but they are convinced that it is. You know, separating families is the same thing as the Russians meddle. It's the same thing as climate change. You have to believe it. You have to accuse Trump of doing it. You have to say it. Nobody's doing anything to stop it other than Trump. Trump tried to overcome existing federal law with a presidential executive action. Court said you can't do it. Trump said, I know, but they made me, so I'm going to try to do it. You know what's way down the list? Things that people are concerned about, electing issues. Climate change. It doesn't even show up in the Rasmussen survey. In some other surveys, it gets an asterisk. It's us a 1%. You know what else doesn't show up? Trump and foreign policy and Putin and Helsinki. People aren't concerned about that. Not in a majority. The media is not reflective of the thinking of this country, but yet their whole purpose is to make their viewers think that that's all the media is. That if you see it on CNN, that's what all of America thinks. That's what all of America believes. That's what all of America is thinking about. Not true. You see it on CBS, ABC, NBC, same thing. That's their great objective, to make you think that what you see on their network is what every other citizen thinks. They're so far off track that they don't even know it. And if they do know it, they're stubbornly refusing it and still trying to force what you don't care about and what you're not interested in down your throat. I got to take a break. We'll be back. We will continue with much more after this. They also discussed on Fox, I guess last Friday night, my theory that down the road, this is no time soon, that down the road, the American left, the Democrat Party, might try to find a way to remove the one obstacle they think they can't control, standing in the way of their permanent acquisition of power, and that is elections. It was discussed, and we have the audio soundbites of that coming up, plus more of your phone calls and other news items here from the stack of stuff. But here, back to the phone, Sandra in Reno, Nevada. You're next. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Rush. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
I want to bring up the security clearances of Clapper, Brennan, and the rest of the cabal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I really think they need to be revoked, if not yesterday, as soon as possible. And the reason for that is right now, the Never Trumpers embedded inside our intelligence agencies are free to disseminate all the information they want to them because they own those clearances. And I think if the clearances are revoked, feeding them information becomes a crime.
Well, that's accurate to say. My question a bit more basic. Why do they still have it? Now, I don't know what the standard operating procedure is. Like, after the Bush administration left Washington to be replaced by the Obama administration, how many of the national security intelligence people, the Bush team, held on to their security clearance? How long, once you get it, do you always have it? Is it revoked after a certain period of time? These are things that I don't know. But when you look at Brennan and Clapper and Comey, and you look at how they have been behaving, you're right. Clapper has been leaking like a sieve, and so is Brennan. And these people have access to information that is not supposed to be leaked. And one of the biggest problems we've had since the election has been the intelligence community and the FBI, DOJ just leaking things left and right, things that they know because they have security clearances. So it's common sense to me says revoke them because they have shown that they can be trusted with the information. It's no more complicated than that to me. Now, grab soundbite number 12 and 13. We get Clapper reacting to this. Late yesterday afternoon, CNN's newsroom, Brooke Baldwin, they would like to revoke your security clearance, Mr. Clapper. How do you feel about that?
For political reasons, this is a kind of a petty way of retribution, I suppose, for speaking out against the president, which I think on the part of all of us are born out of genuine concerns about President Trump.
Yeah, you don't have general concerns about Trump. You have concerns that what you've done is going to be exposed and uncovered. Then Dana Bash said, have you made any money since leaving the office using your security clearance?
Not directly the security clearance, but I guess, I have benefited from the 50 years of service, both in the military and in civilian capacities in the intelligence community. I wrote a book about it, and I appear on this network, and it's, by virtue of that experience. Well, a part of that, of course, is the eligibility for access to classified information. And so, in a sense, yes, I've benefited from that experience.
I would say so. I'd say so. You order James Comey to tell Trump about the Trump dossier part where the golden showers, and Comey tells Trump, and then Comey comes out of meeting, tells you that he told Trump, and you call CNN. And then CNN runs a story on it as though Great Shoe Leather has uncovered some big secret, and they get a big award for it. And all you guys did was leak it. You have profited handsomely from CNN alone. The guy's on CNN every 20 minutes. He's being paid as one of these analysts by CNN. I would think there's a no-brainer. Of course he's earning money from his security clearance. But even before you get there, there are ample reasons to revoke it. If there's any question about it. Be back in a sec, folks. Clapper has said in other interviews that he still has his security clearance as a courtesy. Well, I don't know enough about security clearances to know whether that's unusual or not. But I would think you got an outgoing administration that's tried to spy on you. You just get rid of them. You cancel everybody's clearance and be done with them. Again, we are fastest 3 hours in media. Rush Limbaugh and the Excellence in Broadcasting Network meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. And here's the phone number, 800-282-2882. That's if you want to be on the program. The email address is lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, let's just get to it. Where are we going to go? We're up here now to audio soundbites 5, 6, and 7. Now, these actually happened last Friday night. Fox News Channel. Go back in time. It was last week and the week before, and maybe even a couple times before that. There have just been things that I have seen. People that I have heard speaking a certain way. That my whole life they have registered things and the thoughts that manifest as predictions. And very, very often I'm right about them. It's just one of those things. I think I first saw this as a television show. I've described this, CBS All Access, on their streaming app. The sequel to The Good Wife is called The Good Fight. And without going into great detail, there was a Democrat Party consultant trying to hire a law firm that is the star of this show. And in the process of interviewing people, law firm, to see if they were suitable for being hired, the Democrat consultant flew into Chicago from New York and said, "We have to win. That's all that matters. We have to win. We have to win." It was all about hate, Trump, this, that, everything going out the window. We have to win. And it hit me. Well, how long is it going to be before they get tired of having to win? I mean, they're trying to control pretty much everything else they can control. They view their entitlement to power as something to be in perpetuity. They think power is theirs. They think they are power, and whenever they don't have it, when they lose it, it's an aberration. Now, I'm not predicting that we're going to hear about this next year, next 2 years. And when we first do hear it, it's going to be from some off-the-wall, out-of-the-way leftist place, like some college professor, women's studies professor, who's going to start agitating about the problems democracy is having because they depend on elections. And what are elections but nothing more than expressions of public opinion? And what can we not do with public opinion? We just can't trust it. Why? Because the public's not informed enough. The public is clearly not sophisticated enough. It's not sufficiently aware of how important liberals running things is. And so they're going to look for a way around the way. I contend that they actually already do. I think they already try to circumvent elections. We know that Hillary did. We know that the Democrat National Committee and Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz and Hillary literally rigged the Democrat primaries. During that entire primary, folks, don't you remember how many times after every state had held a primary, crazy Bernie going nuts and winning, and everybody in the media said it doesn't matter. The nomination is Hillary's, and Bernie knows it. His supporters didn't, but Bernie knows it. And it's all about the superdelegates. So no matter what happened in the Democrat primaries, Hillary was going to win because, why? She wasn't going to leave it to chance anymore. She'd lost in the Democrat nomination in 2008, running against the one. And she wasn't going to have that happen again. The Democrats had promised her in 2008 the nomination was hers and thus the presidency. And then when Obama comes along, they abandoned her, cheated on her like she's always been cheated on her whole life, and they went for the young, attractive African-American guy, throwing her overboard. Never again that's going to happen, so here comes 2016, and what? They rig it. I'm just telling you. They're already thinking this way. I think one of the reasons they admire places like Venezuela and Cuba is that those leaders do not have to undergo elections. And when they do, they're sham. Saddam Hussein routinely got 98% of the vote. The 2% that didn't vote were shot. So it's not way out there in terms of expressing the mindset of the average American leftist who's becoming more and more radical. And then there have been other incidents where I've listened to the impassioned demands of media people and Democrat politicians about the must-win status. We have to win. We have to win. We have to. Well, I know that everybody in a competition says we have to win, but the Democrats, but particularly the American left, have to win becomes must win, becomes there can't be anything but us winning. And I think as they lose, ladies and gentlemen, they inch closer to a future in their minds where there aren't any elections. And in their minds, they probably like the American people to agree with this. I think one of the reasons that they spend so much time impugning and destroying conservatives is to facilitate this idea down the road that there's nobody really but liberals who ever ought to win or serve in power. I do know that they think it's their birthright. I do know they think that it's their entitlement. And I do know that they are righteously indignant and offended when they lose. And they blame you. They blame the voters, never blame themselves. So anyway, I've been saying things like this in the recent past, last 3 weeks to a month. And finally, they decided to discuss this on a cable news network. It was the Fox News Channel. And it was Friday night. Jason Chaffetz was filling in for Laura Ingraham on the Ingraham Angle. And he had as his guest a Democrat warrior by the name of Leo Terrell, who was last seen defending O.J. Leo Terrell used to be a regular guest on Greta Van Sustren's own legal show. So that's who this guy is. So here's the first bite with Jason Chaffetz playing the clip from last week to set up the panel.
So what are the Democrats really after when it comes to their Russian obsession? Rush Limbaugh put out an interesting theory yesterday.
When they lose, it can't be because they have been rejected by voters. No, there has to be some nefarious reason. There has to be tampering. There has to be meddling. There has to be collusion. And in the process, they have done a great job of making so many millions of Americans question the integrity of elections now. I believe this all has a very long-term purpose, and that is to eventually get rid of elections. Don't laugh and be very careful in criticizing me, because I'm here to tell you that if they could, they would. So that's to set it up. I frankly was surprised. And I thought that I would forever be alone on this. In fact, I thought if it were ever put out there that it would be mocked and laughed at. And well, here's Rush. Something's gone wrong with Rush today. Rush way, way out there. They're never going to get rid of elections. This is a democracy, blah, blah. But that's not how this happened. So here comes Leo Terrell. Chaffetz, he's not a civil rights attorney, fresh off defending O.J. And he asked Leo Terrell, what is this obsession with Russia? What's the end game? What are you playing for here?
First of all, can I just make a comment about Rush? Rush is way out there. Al Gore, with grace and dignity, accepted the 2000 election. My point is very simple. The Russian meddling is real. Both the Democrats and the Republicans realize that. Look at the Al Gore footage. He accepted with dignity and class the 2000 election. Rush is way off.
That's the strangest way to object to what I'm saying. Can you... I was stunned to talk about how the guy who lost in 2000 did so with grace and dignity, which therefore proves that there's no way the Democrats ever want to ban elections. By the way, Al Gore did not lose with grace and dignity. Al Gore sued the United States. He sued the state of Florida. He took this recount to the Supreme Court. There was no grace and dignity about this. Al Gore even conceded, and then he withdrew the concession. Now, this is not to dump on Al Gore. I'm just telling you, of all the things that somebody could say. Now, Leo did say Russia's way out there, which, frankly, I think would be a lot of people's reaction. Whoa, that's so far away. But I'm telling you this. Deep down in the bowels of this party, when they hear me say this, I will guarantee you that privately, they sit there and say, yeah, there's some people that are going to figure it out. They're thinking about it, folks. Do not doubt me on this. I'm not saying tomorrow. I mean, I made predictions about the left 25 years ago that are just now coming true. 20 years ago. But that's the strangest way to refute it. Wouldn't you think a better way to refute it would be, come on, that is so silly. Jason, I can't believe you even asking us to react to that. Are you kidding? Ban elections when we win most of them? Why would we? This is just crazy. Limbaugh, this is typical of what's going on in this America. We're so far out there. There are any number of ways to react to it, but he cites Al Gore's grace and dignity as evidence that the charge that I am making is illegitimate. So now we go back to Jason Chaffetz, and the other guy on here is Horace Cooper from the Public Policy Research Center. And the conversation continued.
Rush Limbaugh made a pretty strong allegation that the end game here is actually that the Democrats want to get rid of elections.
When Moscow created out of whole cloth the international peace movement that took over Europe with their funding, where was the left? When Moscow said that it was a farce that the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, would put up a strategic defense initiative, where were the progressives? They were with Moscow. You come all the way to today, 2017, when we had the president's budget on defense. Where were the progressives? They did not support it.
So is this not, to me, this is somewhat interesting. Because Jason Chaffetz put it out there twice, and in both instances, nobody knocked the idea out of the park. Nobody really poo-pooed it. In fact, the last guy here, Horace Cooper, is talking. I remember the Global Peace March when this program began. By the way, in 1988, we were chronicling. We had a great Peace March update with Slim Whitman and the song Una Paloma Blanca, because at that time what was happening, the great global peace march for nuclear disarmament was taking place. A bunch of leftists were marching from Mount Shasta in Oregon and elsewhere on the left coast to Washington. And when they got there, they had a die-in on the steps of some building, and they had red dye out there to make it look like blood. It was a mass death, what would look like at a nuclear detonation. And that's what this guy's talking about. And they have been devoted to these pro-Moscow, pro-communist causes for the longest time. And this guy works this way into this response to the banning or the getting rid of or making unnecessary, maybe that's a better, making unnecessary elections. Elections may still happen to be pro forma. But we will, we'll see. Now that I have voiced what I think, the reaction I expected to get, I'm sure we'll get it now, such as the power of suggestion. But anyway, brief timeout. We'll come back and resume speaking with you on the phones. People patiently on the hold. The Rush app, that is the... Now, just to be perfectly clear, there isn't going to be any move to ban elections while the Democrats think that they can get amnesty. If they can get amnesty for 20 million illegals and have open borders, then there won't be any need to ban elections. If they could maintain elections where they win landslides every year, that would be even better. So this is no time soon. I'm just sharing with you a mindset that they have. I'm telling you, maybe the more accurate way to say it is that these people run around cursing elections, that they have to endure them, that they have to go through them. It's such a pain in the rear. And why should they have to? Why should they be subjected to public opinion, which they resent and hold in contempt anyway? But they get amnesty if that thing ever passes. Then they won't need to ban elections. So it's no time soon. Now, if amnesty is defeated, if somehow we hope that is pushed back and stayed back, well, now that's going to cause a degree of panic, because I'll guarantee you they're counting on amnesty. They're counting on eventually getting that. They are counting on the fact that there's going to be a miraculous 10 to 20 million new Democrat voters pretty soon. And if something goes wrong with that, that's when to keep an eye on things. In the meantime, Dudley, Massachusetts, this is Stephen. Great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Very good, Russ. Long time since the loser.
What? He's talking about Dukakis.
Yes, I knew you'd know that. I was told, Bull, that I think President Trump is going to declassify the FISA and a lot of the other documents after all the primaries are done, so he can have all the Trump derangement candidates on the Democratic Party, and then they won't have nothing to do after everything gets declassified.
You mean in 2020?
No, right now. Oh,
you mean the midterms?
Yeah, the midterms. Because it's imperative that he holds on to the House.
You mean after the Democrats have done their primary, so they've got their congressional candidate? Because those, I mean, there's still
congressional primaries. You know, most of them will be all done by September.
Yeah. So after that, then Trump declassifies everything and take the issue away from him.
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Let me ask you this, since you're thinking about this. Are you familiar with the recent news? We know that Trump's so-called fixer lawyer, Michael Cohen, recorded meetings that he had with Trump?
Yes.
Something like 12 tapes. Are you aware that Trump, on the first tape, and maybe all of them, has gone ahead and allowed their release? He has not invoked attorney-client privilege. He's gone ahead and said, yeah, release the tape. He and Rudy, we don't care. Release the tape. What is your thinking? Do you have any thoughts on that?
He's got the biggest pair of brass, you know what. He's not afraid of anybody.
He's the biggest mayor of brass. I think Trump's a liquid metal, but
he's not afraid of anything. You know, he's not going to cower from the press. He's not going to cower from anybody.
Yeah, but this is no. Look, I don't mean to put you on the spot with this. I just thought you might be zeroed in on this, since you're already thinking about declassifying this DOJ documents, the FISA stuff, on when the investigation of Trump collusion actually began. But this stuff with Cohen is really kind of fascinating, because there is an attorney-client relationship there, and they've been looking at all this evidence that they hoovered up from his office under the guise of attorney-client. They had a special master looking at all the stuff they chose, and then telling the judge what's protected and what isn't. And we find out that this Cohen guy recorded meetings with Trump, I think 12 of them. Lawyers don't do that. Now, some are saying, well, Rush, he wasn't really a lawyer. He was a fixer. Yeah, but he was a lawyer. So he did it. That's not done. But these tapes are in the possession of the special master. Special master determines what of this evidence gets thrown to the court, permissible as evidence at a trial. And that's when Trump and his lawyers said, go ahead, release the contents of that tape. I think one of them. Don't care. So the thinking is, there must not be anything incriminating on it. And if there's nothing incriminating on it, and if the special master's going to release his stuff anyway, get out in front of it. Even if there is something incriminating on it, get out in front of it. And whatever you do, don't appear to be hiding anything. Don't invoke privilege. I think it's a fascinating precedent. And I'm trying to figure out what is behind this. There's a reason they're doing this. And a lot of legal beagles, trust me on this, can't figure this out. There are many people think that Trump and Rudy are making a tactical error here by giving up the privilege on these tapes. But they're trying to figure out why. And so that's why all the analysis is going back and forth. Anyway, hang on. Back before you know it. Okay, folks, how soon before the Apple HomePod or Amazon's Alexa will allow you to do your online banking by voice command? You know this is coming. Some banks are setting subs up to be available for this. Everything's about convenience. Banks, in addition, you know, you can get your bank account just for the asking or transferring money from one account to another. That's coming by virtue of your voice. You'll be able to pay your bills sooner than later on these devices, the Alexa, the HomePod, or what have you. That is another example of how much of your data is going to be online, whether you access it or not. It's there. I mean, you do business with banks, their stuff, it's online. You can access it online. There's nothing you can, I mean, you might be able to find a bank somewhere that doesn't do online banking, but you look long and hard for that. Things are not trending in that direction. So, protecting your own online identity is going to come with increasing importance. No matter the innovation that takes place, still going to be hackers, still going to be thieves. Now, the way you protect yourself, the best way, hands down, protect your online identity is with LifeLock. They are the leader in identity theft protection. LifeLock constantly scans the internet for evidence that your identity might be in the wrong hands. You might be saying, how they do that? It's not hard. It's big. It's massive. You become a LifeLock member. You give them all of your credit card numbers that you want monitored and all of your, your social. And then you go about your business. And after not too long a time, an online profile is created within the online computer system. Nobody's tracking you. Nobody's watching you by name. Your name is not associated with this profile. And it's followed rigorously. And one day, there's a big spike. There's an unusually large purchase, maybe a new bank account set up. That will then cause an alert within the LifeLock system, and that takes it to a human being. A human being will then take a look at it and send you an alert saying, a lot of activity here on account X. Is that you? And if it is, you write back, say, yep, it's me, no problem. Everything's fine. They go away. If it isn't you, that's how you find out. You have to wait for some outfit that's been hacked to admit it months later. LifeLock finds out for you pretty soon, the moment it happens. And you write back, no, I'm not buying that. I'm not using my card. Then they get into gear. At that moment, they start trying to shut it down. They start trying to identify who and where this is all happening. And sometimes they pull it off. Now, no one can monitor all transactions all the time. LifeLock's better at it than anybody else. So what happens if there actually is somebody gets away with defrauding you? They've got an online team, human beings called a restoration team, and they get hold of you, and they don't stop working with you until it's all put back together. This is LifeLock. They also now add Norton Security when you become a member. That protects your devices from malware and ransomware. This protects your hardware. So LifeLock is the best, hands down. Sign up today. Protect yourself from all kinds of unknown threats to your identity. Plans start less than $10 a month, and you'll save 10% if you use my name when you sign up. LifeLock.com is the website, or call them at 800-440-4833 and use my name. Either way, LifeLock. Now, you've heard me talking about LifeLock for years, and gobs of you have become members, but some of you are straggling out there. Oh, I don't know. I don't trust this internet stuff. I don't know that I need it. You can't go wrong here. You're not going to be defrauded because you sign up, but you might be defrauded if you don't, with nothing, no way to do anything about it. But if you have LifeLock, there's a way of dealing with it and eliminating the harm. That's LifeLock, 800-440-4833. Make sure you use my name. North Korea is begun dismantling its rocket test site, one of its test sites. The Norks appear to have started dismantling key facilities at a rocket engine test center, according to a group of experts, which this may mark a significant step after last month's summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. Now, wait a minute. I thought all the experts were agreed that Trump had been hornswoggled by this guy. I thought all the experts are saying that Kim had made an absolute fool out of Trump. And he wasn't doing anything. And he's just, joined the long list of fools that Kim Jong-un has made. Clinton, Obama, and now Trump. Keep in mind here, Trump has not given the North Koreans one thing in exchange, except a video showing how Kim could develop his beaches with Trump hotels and Trump casinos. That's it. There are now satellite photos. North Korea actually dismantling key nuclear test sites, satellite photos to indicate that it is happening. Now, on this, let me go back to this attorney-client privilege, because during the break, I checked into something. I think Trump has waived all privilege on all the tapes, not just the first one. And to me, there's only one answer for this. It's because the tapes, they must exonerate him. Now, I know people want to get deep in the woods analyzing all this, making wild speculative predictions and speculative answers just to fill pages on a blog post, but I don't think it's that complicated. The reason he would waive privilege primarily is because he knows the tapes are going to exonerate him. And if there's something on the tape that doesn't exonerate him, getting out in front of it so as to be on offense the whole time is also a preferred position. Now, there is a tape of Trump and Cohen and the Playboy Bunny. This is not Stormy. Oh, have you heard that Stormy's husband is divorcing him? Did you hear why? Stormy's husband can't believe that she would cheat on him. He can't believe that a woman who takes her clothes off in front of a bunch of pawing men at cheap little bars would ever cheat on him. I'm not making it up. That's what the husband is quoted as saying. He's devastated. He found out that Stormy's been cheating, and it's not Trump. This is something else. Anyway, the Playboy Bunny story on one of these tapes is not Stormy. It's less than 2 minutes long. It shows that Trump did not try to buy her off and did not offer to pay for her story. There's no crime there, and there's not even a crime alleged in this particular instance. The only possible crimes are blackmail by the Playboy model and Stormy. But it isn't against the law to pay a blackmailer, or if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, a nuisance claim. That's still not against the law. Now, Stormy is getting divorced, and she is asking for people to respect her privacy out of respect for her family. Isn't irony ironic? Here is Stormy Daniels, who has been as public as she can be with that lawyer of hers, Avenatti, who now is asking for privacy for her and her family. And her husband is devastated that she would cheat on him. Anyway, let me take there's one more thing, too, and that is that Giuliani is saying that Trump would agree to an interview with Mueller if there were no questions about obstruction. Now, prosecutors have at least 12 recordings by Cohen. Stormy Daniels is getting divorced. Trump is offering to be interviewed by Mueller, but no questions on obstruction. Who seems to be in charge of this? Who seems to be in control of this? Is any of this working out the way the left dreamed it would be working out? I have a new study here, ladies and gentlemen, from the University of Padova. This study says that women do not want to date vegetarian men. Studies in that's a lie, huh? Study is entitled "Eating Meat Makes You Sexy: Conformity to Dietary Gender Norms and Practices," published in the most recent issue of Psychology of Men and Masculinity. And the survey was done by 2 women at the University of Padova. So there. Vegans, vegetarians, women do not want you. At least the women you would want. Snerdley disagrees. We'll see you tomorrow.